how can we be better represented in politics? What are the opportunities that exist that we can take advantage of? I hope that in this edition of Think Around the Process, we're able to answer these questions that have been plaguing you in your minds. In today's episode of Think About the Process, we have a development practitioner here with us. She's passionate about issues concerning the girl, child, women, and youth. And she currently serves as one of the board directors in Young Women in Politics Forum. Welcome, Amina. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think, the whole goal of this episode is to let people know the opportunity that exists that they can take advantage of, like I said in the introduction. But I think before we get into that conversation, I'd like to know what informed your passion for young women and for girls and for the young people in general.
For me, I think my passion is drawn from personal experience. From my days in the university, I was part of the student union government. And even before I joined the student union government, I had always been interested in extracurricular activities. And that involved departmental associations and other associations on the campus. So when I joined the student union, I saw how, out of about 14 to 15 members of the executive, there were only 2 of us that were females. And then eventually, when I became the president of the student union, it was a big deal for many people because we never had a female president in my university, number one. And then when it comes to women in politics and leadership, that's not something that is very common in northern Nigeria. And then I think I draw the inspiration also from the challenges that I faced as a young woman. The fact that although there were those who supported me, but there were many who simply did not like the idea and they were not happy with it, and they really did not find it very nice that they had a female president just simply because I was female. So for me, that was kind of like the point where I said, okay, if this could happen in the university, which is not even politics in the wider range, I wonder how it must be for women in politics out there. And then when I got into the development sector and I started working in the field of governance and democracy, I realized that it's actually the same thing, even with older women. But it's worse for younger women because for them it's 2 things: they are young and they are female. So that's where it started from.
Yeah. All right. You just mentioned you work in the development space, of course, and I'd like to know what areas of the development space are you most inclined to? So what areas do you feel that women and girl children are less represented and you feel like they should be more represented, and so that informs most of the work?
Like I said before, drawing from my experience during campus politics, so the field where I work is the area of democracy and governance. And so being in the area of democracy and governance, that also involves politics and elections and all of that. And then you will see that we're Nigerians, the level of representation of women in leadership is very low. And we have continued to see a consistent drop in the representation from 6.something% to now we have like less than 5% in the parliament. And this is very scary, because from the last election to the election before, there's been so much clamor for women inclusion in politics, a lot of programs, a lot of capacity building initiatives, but still we continue to see this decline. That shows us that there's a lot of challenges that have to be looked into. Because even in terms of young people in politics, when you look at the Not Too Young to Run bill, and the fact that a lot of young people benefited from that bill, but when you look at the gender, you see that it's mostly young women and not young women. So there's a lot of challenges that exist there. So in the field of politics and governance, being able to work directly with some of these stakeholders, with some of these women who are politicians, and even with political parties and all of that, it's made me to see firsthand what some of these problems are. And there's a lot that needs to be done in order to change that narrative.
So I think it's needless to add to that you agree that there is this limitation that young people face, because I think it's a very glaring situation. So, but why do you think there is still despite all the, not too young to run bill, all the activism, everybody, speaking out and, asking for more rules to be created for young people, why do you think there's still systemic limitations for young people?
I feel like probably one of the things that we need to pay more attention to is the fact that we have to walk the talk. So everybody, there are different people who have different roles to play, and for people like me, more of the work that we're doing is in terms of advocacy. And advocacy to members of political parties and working with women who have run for office and things like that. But when it comes to in the real sense, there are those who actually have to do the practical work, and the practical work, I mean people who actually have to join political parties. Because in Nigeria, there is no independent candidacy. So in order for you to run for office, you have to belong to a political party. And belonging to a political party means that you have to be, we encourage young people to do it the proper way, become card-carrying members and register at the ward level, and not do what's most of the older generation do. Just wake up one day and say that you want to run for office and then get a card and then just join one party. It doesn't really work. It may work that way for older people, but it doesn't necessarily work that way for younger people. For younger people, it takes a lot more. You have to build that social capital. Because at the end of the day, another problem is also the fact that our elections are very expensive. The money that it costs to purchase the forms and all of that, these are things that are very expensive. But for some young people, the things that have worked for them is that social capital that they've been able to build. The fact that they are known in their communities and they have been members of their political parties for a very long time. So when they've been supporting the activities of the party, they understand the process and they participate. And so when they make their intentions known that they want to run for office, some of these older people would support them either financially or in any other way. And then even if they are not able to really spend money like their other counterparts would do while campaigning and all, they'll be able to get the necessary support from people who will say that, okay, we know this young person has been an active member of the political party and this person has been doing a lot of work, so we feel like if this young person has made up their mind that they want to run and we see that they have the right qualities, then we are ready to support them. So I think most of where we need to channel our energy to is not just on the advocacy, talking to political parties about creating more spaces, being more democratic, the tenets of internal party democracy. We also need to focus attention on becoming members of political parties and understanding the process. Because just becoming members of the parties is not enough if you do not understand what the process is. You need to understand what conventions are, what it means to have ward meetings, and what a convention leads to, and how primaries are done, what are direct primaries, what are indirect primaries. Because there are people who have been members of political parties for a long time, but because they do not necessarily understand this process, they will still get cheated. And that's the case many times with women, and especially women in the rural areas. You'll find many of them who have been active in political parties for a long time. They do campaigns, they go from house to house, they do all of these things. But they do not really understand all those processes. They just know that, okay, at a certain point in time, the party calls them to a place and they say they are having a meeting or they are voting someone and they just announce somebody's name and that's the end. And so you see that at this point, yes, they are members of parties and they have been with their political parties for a long time, but because they do not understand what the process is, they still end up getting cheated at the end of the day because they don't exactly understand what process leads to another, to the point where a candidate emerges and to the point where a person is voted into power. So we still continue to have this imbalance in terms of the representation of men who are elected and those of women who are elected. There's a very the imbalance is just too much.
So are you saying that part of the problem, part of the organization is like the young people are to be blamed for part of the organization that they face? Because I think one of these I can pick out from what you said is walk the talk. So I think you have to belong to a political party. Most young people do not belong to political parties. You have to start early to do your groundwork, build that social capital and know the process. So these things are not what a lot of young people do or know. So does that mean that majority of the blame is to go to young people for the
I wouldn't say majority of the blame is to go to young people. I feel like part of the major problem is that it's sort of a structural problem. When you look at how political parties are run in Nigeria, that's also another problem, because many times you see it's the people from this party that are moving to this party, people from this party that are moving to this party. So there is no ideology anyway. So you cannot even differentiate what exactly party A stands for, what exactly party B stands for. And then when you go in properly, you will see that how parties are run, they are not institutionalized. Many of these parties do not have an actual membership register, for example. And this is what is applicable in many other developed democracies. They have party registers where they have membership, they have details of their members, how many are male, how many are female, in different ways and all of that. But that's difficult to do in Nigeria because people are always cross-carpeting, going from one party to the other. So the structure of the political parties in the first place are not institutionalized. So that's an actual problem in itself. And then the lack of internal party democracy as well, because when you look at the leadership structure of many of these political parties too, you see that they are mostly run by men, and not just men but older men. It's only in political parties where you find a youth leader who is 60 years old, and there are young people in that party, but then maybe they don't speak up, or they are comfortable with it, or something. So, because for me, it looks ridiculous for me as a young person to be in the place, and then the 60-year-old is the one that is representing me. But that's something that you mostly find in these structures of. So our political parties are not exactly institutionalized, and that's a big problem. And for that one, it's not the fault of the youth; it's the way our political parties are structured, and that's the reason why. There's a lot that also needs to be done in that regard, and there's a number of organizations that have been working with political parties, since the return of democracy to Nigeria, trying to get them to work properly and trying to get them to, to include some of this tenets of internal party democracy, give room for youth, give room for women, give room for persons with disability, and even though the changes are very, very slow. It's like going at a snail pace, but some of these things are actually beginning to happen. It's just that it's happening very slowly. So young people have their own role to play in terms of walking the talk and joining political parties and understanding the process, understanding the system, and building all of that work that is needed. But at the same time, the political parties also need to do better in terms of how the structure is and actually making it so that it's no longer a systematic barrier for these vulnerable groups.
Yeah, and I think we shouldn't close our eyes to the fact that right now there's a revolution. There's more awareness among young people. It didn't used to be this way before. And although I think we need to have more people become aware, but I think we need to acknowledge that there are actually young people that are aware, young people that are interested. And so that leads me to ask, do you think that there's any sort of support for these young people that are interested in politics? Not just interested as in to participate and vote or whatever, but to contest for position or whatever. Do you think that there's enough support provided them by people who've been there?
Well, if you say by people who have been there before, that's a very tricky one. It's not easy to answer because there isn't exactly any data anywhere to support that. But I can say from some of the personal stories that I know, some young people who are around me, some of them are lucky enough to have people who have either run for office before or who are in office who are willing to provide that kind of support for them. But it doesn't always happen. Not everybody is lucky enough to have those kinds of opportunities. But in terms of organizational support, CSOs, NGOs, and all of that, you will find a lot of those kind of support. But most times those will happen when maybe there's an election close by. You see organizations organizing different types of trainings for candidates, for people who are interested in running for office. On different aspects, maybe campaign finance, running a campaign, and many other aspects. So NGOs and CSOs are really doing a lot in that regard. And even some organizations that are coming up also specifically to support young people, specifically to support young women and women generally. And an organization like Elect Her, I think they focus mostly or only on women actually. So both older women, younger women. And I know part of what they are doing right now is creating a database where they can get information about the women who have either run for office or who intend to run for office in the future, so that they can provide this kind of support for them. And then you also have organizations like YAGA that have been supporting young people for a long time in terms of training and mentorship and different kind of initiatives. And other organizations also, like Raising New Voices. I know that in 2019, before the elections, they did a crowdfunding to support some young people who were running for office in the parliament. And they were able to gather, you know, a good amount of money for an organization that was just starting at the time, and they supported these candidates to run for office, and some of them were successful. So I think there's a lot that is being done in that regard, but of course we are like Oliver Twist, we always want more.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned mentorships, training, because I feel like I was going to ask if there are opportunities like that, because you know that is really important. Mentorships are really important. Maybe having someone who's going to guide you through that process, and it's interesting that you mentioned that as well. So, but aside from mentorships, aside from trainings, you know, I think one of the biggest challenges that you can face is that people are really trying to survive in this country. And that's just the basic thing. People are trying to survive. That's like the first priority for everyone before you talk about any other thing. So I'm going to say that it's very obvious that finance is a huge challenge for a lot of people. So in that regard, is there any kind of support, maybe grants, maybe musicians giving some form of financial support to aid people? And well, let's take that.
So if you know, like, what we are looking for is like direct financial support to candidates, like young people who are running. That's something that you most likely will not find, especially with NGOs and CSOs. It's really, I don't say impossible, but I've never seen. It's almost something that they don't usually do, like give you money directly for you to run your campaign and all that. But the kind of support that they can give is maybe help you print posters and flyers, help you maybe support your constituency office and all of that. It depends on the organization and what the level of their involvement can be. For some, it's only trainings and capacity building that they can offer you. And for some of them, they'll be able to do those type of things for you, like printing your posters and all those other things. However, the example that I gave earlier with Raising New Voices, it's a Nigerian organization, and they were able to do crowdfunding. So that's an aspect that I think can be looked into and people can build into. I think in upcoming time, what we just need to do is create more awareness about initiatives like that, where people can donate monies that can be used to support candidates who are running for office. So as you're working towards running for office and contesting, you should also have some sort of financial plan, maybe have a business or something, because at the end of the day, you may get the support financially and you may not get it. So it's better to have a plan B rather than think that you would get something and then you end up not getting it, and then it messes up with your whole plan.
But I think that the most important thing is that there is actually support out there. No matter how small, just for people to be aware of these supports. And that awareness is not as common as you want it to be. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this really. So how can we young people now take advantage of this? How can we take hold of this support that exists? I'm asking this because I feel like even though there is support, there's still like some form of criteria to be met. I don't correct me if I'm not going to, but so if there are criteria to be met, what are they? And then how do we really at what level should we get to be confident that if we need the support, if we request for it, we're going to get it?
I feel it's absolutely right, and it's okay for any organization that wants to support you to get some level of commitment from you, whether as a young person or as a candidate or anything of that sort, because there will be situations where you would have put in a lot of support for someone, and later on the person decides to maybe withdraw from the race, or they're no longer interested in it. That means that all that you've invested is gone. So honestly, organizations put in criteria, but they are reasonable criteria. Maybe just a couple of questions to check to assess how serious this person is. What party do you belong to? Do you know your ward? What have you done in your ward? Do you visit your ward? Like how many times do you visit your ward and things like that? So those are things that would actually form some sort of criteria for them selecting the people that they support. And for me, I think it's absolutely right, because at the end of the day, it's not easy to put out this support to people. It's not easy to get the funding in the first place for you to be able to support people. So you want to make sure that the people that you're supporting are people that are actually serious and would actually see it through to the end. So I think those are some of the things that would form the criteria. It varies from one organization to the other. Some organizations, their criteria may not be as much as that. Maybe for them it will just be that you are able to show that you actually belong to a political party. Some of them, they will need to get your commitment that you would actually conclude your campaign or run for office or do whatever it is that you have intended, the reason why they are supporting you and things like that. So yeah, some of those criteria are there, and I think for anyone who wants to run for office or go into politics, you just need to make sure and convince yourself first that you actually want to do this. Because it really makes no sense, and it dampens people's spirits when we see people who we have started supporting or who we have put in so much for decide to drop out of the race eventually. I mean, last year, 2019, I was really upset, even though I don't support anyone because of the field where I work, but I was really upset when I saw a female candidate, who had said a lot of things about how, she wants to run, she wants to do this, she wants to do that, and later on she just withdrew from the race. It really, really annoyed me,
Was that presidential candidates?
Yes. Yeah, it really, really annoyed me, because I just felt like, now you're going to make people start making reference to this next time when we have another female who wants to run, and be like, this is what you people do, then later on we just withdraw. I mean, see it through to the end. Even if whether you win or you don't win, but the fact is you started it and you finished it. That's the important thing, because doing that alone is something that could actually inspire many other people, and they would want to do that as well. But when you start that and many people are inspired, they are supporting you and all of that, and then later on you just decide to drop out, it's not something that is nice to see. Yeah.
So start and see it through to the end. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I believe that a lot of people have gained something from this. So we have established that there's actually support. So I think that's what you need to know. We need to give you that confidence that there's support. But you also need to do some work. You need to belong to a political party. You need to start early. Do your groundwork. Just do your research. Make sure you understand the processes before you can make the move. And when you do make the move, see it through to the end, like you said.
See it through to the end.
Yeah. So thank you once again for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.